Peace be upon you, and welcome to Deen and Dharma. I'm your host, Shaima. If you are new here, let me explain our title. Deen is an Arabic term often translated as religion, but it really means a way of life, or a path of debt and gratitude we owe to the divine. Dharma is a Sanskrit term from Buddhist traditions, implying cosmic law, truth, or the nature of reality. Here, we sit at the intersection of these two great rivers of wisdom, Islam and Buddhism, to see what they can teach us about being human. Today, we're talking about you, or rather, the thing you think is you. In the 17th century, the French philosopher René Descartes famously said, "I think, therefore I am." He suggested that we are split beings. He believed there is a physical body, a machine made of flesh and bone, and inside that machine, there is a separate, non-physical mind, a thinking thing. Centuries later, the philosopher Gilbert Ryle looked at this idea and criticized it. He called it the ghost in the machine. Ryle was critiquing the idea, but let's be honest. That's exactly how we feel, isn't it? Even if you aren't a philosopher, you walk through life feeling like there's a little pilot sitting behind your eyes. You feel like there's a solid, unchanging Shaima, or John, or Sarah inside your head, pulling the levers, steering the body, and looking out through the windows of your eyes. We cling to this ghost. We spend our whole life decorating it with job titles. We defend it when someone insults us on the internet or in real life. We fear its disappearance more than anything else. But today we're going to ask a dangerous question. We're going to use the wisdom of the Quran and the teachings of the Buddha to look behind the curtain. We will explore the Nafs, the Islamic conception of the soul's struggle for refinement, and we will explore Anatta, the startling Buddhist insight that there is no permanent self at all. Is there really a ghost in there? Or have we spent our lives worshipping a shadow? Let's begin with the Deen, the Islamic perspective. In Western psychology, we often talk about the ego, or the self, as one solid block. You might say, I have high self-esteem, or I need to find myself. In Islam, the self isn't a static block. It is a spectrum. It is a process. The Arabic word for this is the nafs. Linguistically, nafs is related to breath. It is the self that breathes, desires, and experiences the world. But the Quran describes the nafs, the self, as something that changes states. It evolves. Think of it less like a solid rock and more like water, which can be ice, liquid, or steam, depending on the temperature. The Quran identifies 3 specific stages of the nafs, or the self. If you are a new learner, think of these as the stages of moral evolution. The first and the lowest stage is called nafs al-amara bis-su'. This translates to the soul that commands evil. Now, evil here doesn't necessarily mean you're a villain in a movie. It just refers to the primal, unrefined animal nature. This is the ghost in the machine when it is entirely addicted to the machine. It is mentioned in Surah Yusuf, the chapter called Joseph, chapter 12. In verse 53, God says, "Indeed, the soul is a persistent enjoiner of evil, except those upon which my Lord has mercy." This is the state of pure reactivity. When you are scrolling through social media for 3 hours, despite knowing you have work to do, that is nafs al-amira. When someone cuts you off in traffic and your immediate reaction is blinding rage, that is nafs al-amira. In this stage, the ghost is a slave to the body's dopamine cravings. It seeks dominance, pleasure, and comfort. It perceives itself as the center of the universe. It says, I want, therefore I take. But then something happens. The heat rises. We enter the second stage, Nafs al-Lawwama. This is Arabic for the self-reproaching soul. It's mentioned in Surah Al-Qayyimah, chapter 75 of the Quran, titled The Resurrection, verse 2. God says, وَلَا أُقْسِمُ بِالنَّفْسِ اللَّوَّامَةِ, and I swear by the self-reproaching soul. Lawama comes from the Arabic root word for blame. This is the self-blaming soul, or in modern terms we can call this the conscience. This is the awakening. The ghost wakes up and realizes it has been trapped in the machine. You yell at your spouse and 10 minutes later you feel a pit in your stomach. You think, why did I do that? That wasn't right. I need to be better. Many people think this guilt is bad. They try to suppress it. But in Islam, this guilt is a sign of spiritual life. A dead body feels no pain. Only a living body feels pain. If your soul feels the pain of regret, it means it's alive. This stage is a battlefield. It is a stage of mujahada. You are constantly fighting the gravity of your lower desires. It is exhausting, but it is necessary. Finally, if one persists in that struggle, they reach the summit, An-Nafs al-Mutma'inna, the reassured soul. This is found in Surah Al-Fajr, chapter 89 of the Quran, titled The Dawn, verses 27 and 28. God says, يا أيها النفس المطمئنة ارجعي إلى ربك راضية مرضية. O reassured soul, return to your Lord, well pleased and pleasing to Him. Mutma'inna in Arabic means tranquil, reassured, at peace. In this stage, the war is over. The ghost is no longer fighting reality. The impulses of the body have been tamed. You no longer have to force yourself to be kind. Kindness becomes your nature. You no longer have to force yourself to avoid envy. You genuinely feel happy for others. The Sufis, the mystics of Islam, say that in this stage, the nafs has become a polished mirror. It no longer has dirt on it. It simply reflects the light of God. The I has surrendered. So, Islam tells us to polish the ghost until it reflects the divine. Now let's pivot to the Dharma. Buddhism asks a more haunting question. Is there actually a ghost to begin with? This brings us to the concept of Anatta in Pali. It translates to the non-self or no self. Now, to a new learner, this sounds terrifying. It sounds like nihilism. What do you mean, no self? I'm right here. I'm listening to this podcast. The Buddha wasn't saying you don't exist biologically. He was saying that what you think is a permanent self is actually a misunderstanding of how your mind works. To explain this, he used the framework of the 5 skandhas, or the 5 aggregates. Imagine you're baking a cake. You have flour, eggs, sugar, butter, and heat. When you mix them, you get a cake. But if you take the flour away, the eggs away, the sugar away, where is the cake? The cake isn't a separate thing. It's just the name we give to the mixture of parts. The Buddha said, you are just a mixture of 5 changing processes. Form, which is your physical body. Sensation, which is the raw feeling of pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Perception, recognizing what things are, like that is a tree. Mental formations, your biases, your habits and thoughts. And consciousness, which is the awareness of the other 4. Let's use a visual that is easier to grasp. Think of a whirlpool in a fast-moving river. When you look at the whirlpool, it seems real. You can point at it, you can name it, you can say, look at the big whirlpool. It seems to have a center and a shape. But look closer. Is the whirlpool a solid object? No, it is just water flowing in a circle. The water that makes up the whirlpool at 2 p.m. is totally different from the water that makes it up at 2:01 p.m. The water is constantly rushing through it. If the river stops flowing, the whirlpool vanishes. It has no independent existence. It is not a thing, it is a pattern. Anatta, the non-self, teaches you that you are not a solid rock. You are a whirlpool. You're a pattern of thoughts, memories, and biological impulses swirling together so fast that it looks like a solid person. But there is no permanent ghost in the center holding it all together. If the river metaphor is too abstract, let's go to the movies. When you watch a movie, you see a hero on the screen. He walks, he talks, he saves the day, he looks like a continuous solid person. But if you were to go into the projection booth, what do you find? You find a reel of film, static pictures, frame after frame after frame, because they move at 24 frames per second. Your brain blurs them together to create the illusion of continuity. Buddhism argues that Shaima, or you, is a movie. Frame 1 could be a thought of hunger. Frame 2, a memory of breakfast. Frame 3, the sensation of your foot itching. Frame 4, the sound of a bird outside. These happen so fast that we say, I'm hungry and my foot itches. We create a character called I to tie the frames together. But when you meditate, when you really slow down, you start to see the gap between the frames. You see that the ghost is just a story the brain tells itself. Why does it matter? Because there is no solid ghost to protect. You don't need to be so defensive. You don't need to be so afraid of change. The me that is offended by an email is just a passing cloud. It's just a frame in the movie. You can let it pass. So we have two very different maps here. Islam says yourself is real, but it can be impure. Purify it until it shines with God's light. Buddhism says yourself is an illusion. See through it and the suffering stops. On the surface, they contradict. But if we go deeper, they meet at a beautiful destination, the death of arrogance. In Islamic mysticism, Sufism, the ultimate goal is a state called fana. This translates to annihilation. It is the state where the mystic is so focused on the presence of Allah, on the presence of God, that they forget their own existence. The I dissolves into the divine. There's a famous Sufi story where a man knocks on the door of his beloved God. A voice says, "Who is it?" The man says, "It's me." The voice says, "Go away. There's no room in this house for two." The man leaves, meditates, and returns years later. He knocks. The voice asks, "Who is it?" The man says, "It is you," and the door opens. This is the convergence, whether you call it anatta or non-self in Buddhism, or fana, which is annihilation of the self into God. The result is the same. The ghost, the petty, demanding, insecure ego must die. And when the ghost dies, what is left? In Buddhism, you have compassion and clarity. In Islam, you have mercy and light. The ghost isn't killed violently, it's just recognized as a shadow, and a shadow cannot block the light once you understand that it has no substance. We've spoken enough. Now let us try to experience this. I invite you, wherever you are, unless you are driving, to sit comfortably. We're going to do a practice that uses these two traditions. We'll use the Buddhist technique of observation to calm the mind, and the Islamic technique of dhikr, the remembrance of God, to purify the heart. Close your eyes. Take a deep breath in through the nose and out through the mouth. Bring your attention to this breath. Don't try to control it. Just watch it. Notice the air hitting your nostrils. Notice the chest rising. Ask yourself, who is breathing? Are you doing it, or is the body just breathing itself? This is the machine. It works perfectly without a pilot. Notice the itch on your skin. Notice the weight of your hips on the chair. These are the skandhas, the 5 aggregates, just sensations. Let them be. Now I want you to bring to mind a mild conflict you had recently, maybe a rude comment or a moment of impatience. Feel that tightness in your chest. Feel that ghost rising up. It says, "How dare they?" or "I am right." Look at that feeling. Identify it. Is this Nafs al-Amira, the commanding soul? The ego demanding its territory? Don't judge it. Just see it. Notice that the anger isn't solid. It's swirling like the whirlpool. It's energy. Now we apply the solvent in your mind or with your lips. I want you to repeat the phrase of unity in Arabic. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. It means there's no God but God. But on a deeper level, it means there is no reality but the reality. There is no me, there's only Him. Inhale, 1, 2, 3. Exhale, 1, 2, 3. La ilaha illallah. Imagine that ghost of anger. Say the phrase and watch the ghost dissolve into light. The whirlpool of your pride. Let it flow back into the river. The movie frames of your anxiety. Let the film melt. La ilaha illallah. You are not the anxiety. You are the space in which the anxiety happens. You are not the ghost. You are a servant of the light. What remains? In Islam, we call this sakina, divine peace. In Buddhism, sunyata, emptiness. Rest in that quiet space. The ghost is gone. You are free. And whenever you are ready, wiggle your fingers and toes. Open your eyes. The ghost will come back. The ego will try to take the wheel again, probably as soon as you check your phone. But no, now you know the secret. You know where the exit door is. This has been Deen and Dharma. I am Shaima. May you walk through the world this week with a lighter heart and a quieter ghost. Peace be upon you.